Good evening and welcome to this edition of The Fourth Estate. My name is Alan Kasuja and my guests this evening include Simon Mulongo, who is the Member of Parliament for
Bubulo
County East. There you are. Expect me to stumble over that. And he is a man who's gone through Imbalua, a strong man from Bugisu, very proud of his heritage. And then, of course, the man next to him claims to be a Mugisu and Mteso at the same time. No idea how he pulls that off. We missed you last weekend. Chris Obore, investigations editor at the Daily Monitor. And of course, Nicholas Opio, he's a sober mind. Him and the complete opposite of Chris. What? He's a lawyer, human rights, Koyelo's lawyer, and soon to be Achelam's lawyer. How much are you going to get paid? How big is your fee note for this case?
We're serving our country. We do not care about the money we get from it.
Okay, fair enough.
Serving our country and serving the cause of justice.
All that is said, well said before they join Parliament, and then they become something else. And then, of course, Angelo Izama, great to have you here. Angelo is a journalist, he's a fellow of all sorts of places, and he's a thinker and a serious analyst who thinks
why
that
is it that my titles are always long? Why don't you just say Angelo Izama, maybe journalist?
Do you want me to say that?
That's what I do, really.
I usually think that that's to
he
do
made
an
a mistake.
incredible
He thought he's the
justice.
strongest Mugisu. No, they are very strong Mugisu than Simon.
Which Mugisu was stronger than Simon?
This one is the weakest.
Well, are you saying Irene Moloni is stronger than Simon?
No, I'm saying I know Mugisu. Simon may be among those who try to be strong, but they are strong Mugisu.
Surely, Simon, you've got to defend yourself against such.
He knows it.
Well, he speaks from the opposite, and he knows it well.
Right, okay. Okay,
but see, it's being unfair to the Honorable MP. Any Mugisu who has gone through the knife is considered a strong Mugisu.
That makes it very many Mugisu then.
Strength in the Mugisu goes beyond the knife.
Okay, fair enough. So let's just come to the way things are looking, Simon. Let me throw you in first. I'm told that your party, the NRM, for which you're a die-hard member, is set to lose this attempt to win what's that constituency called? Where
Bukoto?
Bukoto South. Yeah. Is there any truth in that? What have you heard so far as
Well, as far as I know, the NRM is doing pretty well.
Right.
And we're set to win that seat.
I'm told that they've actually sent 60 members of parliament from the NRM there, and these are campaigning for Sambu. Not from Sambu, but for the guy from DP, as opposed to the NRM guy, purely because Sambu insulted the Kabaka.
I'm not aware of that. What I know is that there are volunteers, there are people who sympathize with various candidates.
Right.
But as for the party, we're set to support our own candidate.
Okay. But you say that with so much confidence, like you've been winning all the by-elections that have been taking place.
We just haven't won by-elections, but we have won elections.
No. Let's talk about the by-elections.
By-elections? Well, there were 6 of them. We got 1. And we lost the 5, narrowly though, like the one of Luero, 30 votes, and a bit of the other 2 or 3. But, well, there are reasons, local reasons for each one of them.
Mr. Investigations Editor, what are the reasons that you think that NRM seems to be losing all these by-elections, just to bring you in and get your insight on it?
The reasons, first of all, you're asking a wrong person, because I'm sure NRM has never been winning elections. It has been a maneuvering to get results. So when you ask me why they are losing today, you are telling me, actually what is happening today is what should have happened earlier. Except that during presidential and parliamentary, there is always this attention to the master not to lose. So all the attention is given to
But surely you're not being fair to a party that has over 260 members of parliament.
I'm discussing how the MPs came. I can assure you the elections of NRM have not been free and fair. Even Simon will hear.
Are you saying Simon's election was not free and fair?
He knows. I don't want to get into him as a person.
Well, I think he's right, to the extent of which he does not wish NRM well.
Right.
But NRM has genuinely and properly won the elections.
Sam, do you agree with that, Angelo, that NRM has properly and genuinely won elections recently?
No.
Why do you say that?
Because I have a front row seat to the all kinds of maneuverings going on in order to acquire a proper result. I remember one time, actually, this is the 2006 election, I called to ask for an estimate, and the person who was the NRM person, he's now in Parliament, he used to be an important fellow in State House, gave me the exact percentage, which turned out to be
so what they won by the percentage.
The Electoral Commission announced. And the reason I was even having that conversation is because Monitor was running a tally center and we had our projections from the north, and the impression I got was that the figures we got were integrated to make it appear as if that the win was not as exaggerated. But I felt it was
but just a minute. Was that being predictive, that some predictions were done and the results were close to prediction?
It actually implies that the decisions the results were predetermined.
Because I'll be happy to know if some criminal tenants in elections to which he was a witness as such and kept quiet and never told any law enforcement.
Is it trying to say, Nicholas, that NRM has been involved in criminal activities as far as the elections are concerned? Is that really fair?
Well, you've only got to look at the number of court cases we've had after elections throughout the last 2 elections. You know, many MPs have lost their seats. In the last election, 2001, the president almost lost his seat. The allegations running across all of these cases is that there have been cases of electoral malpractice. And it's not just the NRM. Every political party that has been involved in these elections have been involved in electoral malpractices, committing electoral offenses. And we know this. It's not public secret. The only thing is that the NRM has been the beneficiary of this, and they have benefited more than the FDC, the DP, and other parties that took part in the elections.
Okay.
Fact is a separate issue, by the way, Alan, from talking about the support that the party enjoys.
Right.
Yeah.
So
as far as the exercise of
elections, distinguish the two?
I think that their candidates, the president, enjoys considerable support.
What I think is not coming out clear here is that if you want to know how NRM reaches elections, whenever they're announcing presidential results, they begin with President Museveni at 90. When they realize that the opposition is coming closer, they will put it at 60 until it remain there. they don't change. And I'm wondering why. For instance, the courts also. Presidential and parliamentary elections take place on the same day.
Right.
I am wondering why there are malpractices on the parliamentary that can be proven in the court, and there are no malpractices in the presidential that can be proven in the court.
The findings of the 2000 of the case following the 2001 elections were that there were certain irregularities in the
elections. But just to bolster Angelo's point.
Yeah, that's an interesting point to make. But let's say this.
If you look at certain counties in this country, go to the north, go to Lango, go to West Nile, for example. In local constituency election, an MP who is completely opposition wins, but his presidential candidate, in this case, let's say Kizza Besigye, doesn't get the same number of votes that his MP has got in this area. It therefore means that in some areas, President Museveni is more popular than the opposition. Even if the opposition MP wins in the area, President Museveni wins in those areas. In other words, the number of votes got by a local MP who is opposition does not necessarily reflect the number of votes obtained by his presidential candidate, meaning, in my view, that the president enjoys, I think, somewhat bigger percentage of support in this country.
Okay, you're making a point before Nicholas said, talking about the dynamics, making sure that that NRM comes out on top in difficult situations. What exactly has been employed? There's been violence. We've talked about violence employed. We've talked about cash. What else has been done in your investigation ways? What else have you discovered as having been done to win this election?
The election is rigged before the voting day, and it's not rigged at the Electoral Commission. People don't think it's done here at the Electoral Commission. It's actually done by intelligence at the grassroots levels.
But how come they fail to do it
at the returning officers level?
How come they fail to sustain that through by-elections? Because isn't it unfair to say that they still do?
The by-election, first of all, the interest is to have the master win the election. The master is President Museveni. He has formed the government. So these other by-elections could be influenced by the NRM dynamics. I don't want Mlongo, therefore we can support the Opio lawyer, Opio who's from UPC or DP. So the fight of rats in a trap comes in after the presidential election. So these losses you see NRM grasshoppers in a bottle trying to hit each other.
Right.
But the big man is commander-in-chief, and he still wants to appoint the cabinet.
Is this a reflection of the truth?
Sure, I think we need to have some intellectual honesty when we come to this kind of discussion. My colleague making such overly huge, blundering statements. First of all, they don't logically add up. You can't say that the intelligence, either community or operatives at the grassroots do this to rig And why don't they even go ahead to rig the by-election?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. And why?
Because he cannot answer that simply because he's mixing
But
things.
the intelligence of the president, not the local MPs like you.
No.
And you are part of the intelligence, by the way.
What I know is that, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Now, what I know is that elections, the victories are hard earned because I've been a product of that process. I've ever lost elections, I've ever won elections.
Right.
It's really hard earned, and we do that entirely through mobilization and convincing the
This
population.
mobilization, is that euphemism for buying votes, or what is mobilization?
No, mobilization means traversing the countryside, the villages, and expressing yourself about the
Alan, just
manifesto.
a minute.
But
so on and
as
so
an
forth.
insider, Simon, why are you losing by elections?
As I was saying, the varied reasons. A number of them are actually local. One of them being that the candidates themselves could be having certain issues that in the local geopolitics disadvantage them. The second aspect are the voters themselves. Some voters tend to think that they've given you an opportunity and you've been returned, therefore you're not favorable, and so they could go for somebody else anyway. Then the other one is there are cliques which actually emerge, either within the party or with the candidate presenting himself or herself, and those also have a rate of bearing.
I said
on
there
the
are cliques
candidate.
within the NRM.
Like another party, yes.
No,
Right.
what Simon is missing here, Simon has been a victim of this NRM in rat fights. At one point, the Bullets voted more than registered voters in the constituency.
What happened in that case?
He knows it. Bullets voted and Simon had to lose.
Yeah.
He knows it. And he's here trying to deny the issue of this kind of fight.
We are not just denying, we're saying that the way he's bringing out the argument doesn't add up.
I bring them in a very honest manner.
Yeah, but now you see, this brings two things to the fore. Number one, elective politics, fast past the post as the election as part of the process, where you have the winner taking it all and those sorts of things, and then also brings to question the multi-party dispensation. Nicholas said earlier on that all parties are doing this. All parties are struggling for that one person to go through. Are we suffering teething problems? Are the structures of the parties that exist at the moment suffering teething problems, or are these the characteristics that define the nature of our politics?
There's not been a major movement within the NRM in a radically new direction. Yoweri Museveni has been their leader for very long. Much of what people say are changes in NRM are attempts to either remove him or reduce his power. So, for instance, if you look at the last 10-15 years, the one person who represented, if you'd like, an ideological departure is Dr. Kizza Besigye. He said to that party, the system at the time, it's not working. He's really the counter-revolutionary. But after he was defeated and the party rallied around Yoweri Museveni, maybe the next break you would have said was the departure of Kategaya, Bidandi Sali, and Miriam Matembe around 2003 in opposition to the third term. But Uganda's political system suffers simply, the lack of any real alternatives. That's why I'm not too worried about the split in NRM, because it's not an ideological split.
What is it? It's a what? It
is a power struggle.
Right.
Yeah, it's a power struggle, and I'm not excited at all when people talk about factions. I was interested when the independents said they were going to caucus and have because people were talking around this town about that being a second or third party with the numbers. But now I'm skeptical, because the power struggle will just deliver new people, not new ideas to Ugandans. And I think that what we really need is someone to excite the imagination of voters and take the country in a different direction.
Does NRM need to implode so that we come up with the fresh ideas that Angelo seeks?
Well, you see, absolutely yes and no. Because one, I think the idea that Angelo seems to advance is that the old broom, have run out of ideas. What we need is a fresh page, new people, new faces with new ideas. I don't foresee President Museveni reinventing himself into somebody new, somebody who has new ideas. Absolutely not. I don't see Olaro Tunu, I don't see Besigye doing that. I think what we need to do in this country is just turn the page and move on to the next generation of leaders who are devoid of the past deficiencies of our electoral process. My view is that a new face would be the new person to do that. That may not come from the NRM right now, it might come from somewhere else.
That's a very important question. Where will the new face come from and who will deliver it? We'll discuss that next after the break.